Balance in correction. How to educate without blocking child development. Quick read. Key points of the article. The danger of excessive rigor. Disproportionate and arbitrary reprimands teach children that they should not take initiatives to avoid mistakes and disapproval from adults. Construction of responsibility. The sense of right and wrong is not taught through rigid verbal imposition, but through practical experience, natural consequences, and everyday social relationships. Normality of mischief. Children do not have the mature cognitive capacity to perfectly discern the social etiquette of different environments. For them, the world is a playful space to play. Path of balance. Correcting with dialogue, empathy, and welcoming firmness guides children's behavior without paralyzing or generating fear that blocks human development. Educating a child or student is one of the most demanding and complex challenges of adult life. On this daily walk, we often come across unwanted behavior, messes, and so-called mischief. Faced with frustration and fatigue, many parents and teachers tend to act with excessive rigor, proportionally detached from the seriousness of the child's act. However, clinical psychopedagogy and behavioral psychology alert us to the profound risks of this disproportionate rigor. When we apply arbitrary and violent corrections, whether verbal or physical, we send a clear and harmful message to the child's developing brain that making mistakes is unacceptable and dangerous. As a consequence, the child learns that the best way to remain safe and accepted is to stop trying, blocking their curiosity, creativity, and personal initiative. The impact of excessive rigor on the children's brain. A child's brain is highly plastic and shapes its connections based on lived experiences. Fear activates the cerebellar amygdala, the structure responsible for survival reactions, fight, flight, or freeze. When a correction is carried out in a harsh or humiliating way, the child's brain goes into a state of high alert. If this dynamic of fear and repression is frequent, the child develops what we call initiative block. To avoid the pain of disapproval and severe scolding, she concludes that it is better not to take risks, not to create, and not to explore. This defensive behavior seriously undermines self-confidence, autonomy, and problem-solving abilities in adulthood. In short, excessive rigor blocks the potential for human development. Practical experience as a matrix of the sense of right and wrong. The sense of responsibility, ethics, and understanding of right and wrong are not abstract concepts that children assimilate simply by listening to theoretical discourses from adults. A very common mistake adults make is to demand complex ethical and social principles from children with the same rigor required of an adult. It is important to remember that the maturation of the frontal lobe of the brain, the area responsible for impulse control and social discernment, is only completed in early adulthood. For a young child, the subtle distinction between behavior appropriate for an amusement park and that required in a quiet doctor's office or upscale restaurant is not clear or intuitive. The primary impulse of childhood is to play, discover, and test bodily and spatial limits. Doing mischief, running where he should walk, or talking loudly are normal manifestations of childhood vitality. By demanding strict compliance with social etiquettes without considering the child's age and playful needs, the adult imposes a biological requirement that is impossible to meet without generating suffering or forced apathy. How to correct with balance. Psychopedagogical tips. Differentiate the child's behavior. Never label the child, "You are bad," "You are disobedient." Instead, direct the criticism at the specific action. "You did a dangerous mischief," that throwing the object was not correct. This preserves children's self-esteem. Use calm as a self-regulation tool. The child learns to calm down by observing the adult's calmness. If you shout to correct a shout, you are teaching that aggression is the legitimate way to resolve conflicts. Breathe and speak firmly and affectionately. Anticipate the rules in a simple way. Before entering quiet environments, talk to the child at eye level and briefly explain what is expected of them. Now let's go into the doctor's office, where people are resting. We need to speak more quietly, okay? Allow mistakes as a learning opportunity. Show that making mistakes is part of the process of growing and that the important thing is to fix the situation. Help her think, what can we do to fix this now? Conclusion. Correcting with balance does not mean being permissive or ignoring the need for limits. Limits are fundamental for children to feel safe in the world. However, These limits must be constructed based on affection, respect, and pedagogical coherence, and never through fear or arbitrariness. By replacing violent scolding and humiliating punishments with safe guidance, reflective conversations, and emotional support, we allow children to develop a strong sense of ethical responsibility without compromising their creative potential and joy in life. We educate for autonomy and happiness, ensuring that human development occurs fully, healthfully, and without obstacles. By the author of Coffee. If this content was useful to you, consider supporting the maintenance of the blog by purchasing a symbolic coffee for the author. Scan the code above or copy the Pix key below.